It's Sunday, November 9th, 2025, and I was going to be talking about the energy strikes last night. The Ukrainians struck a number of energy facilities. This is after Russia did the same to Ukraine the night before, but the bigger story is that Pokrovsk holds. I'll get to Pokrovsk in just a little bit. Let's talk about energy. Yesterday evening, Ukrainian drone strike targeted a power substation in Koronevo-Kursk region. And then we saw more about Voronezh, but preliminary analysis indicates that 3 missiles hit the newly built energy block of Voronezh TPP thermal power plants. 2 struck the boiler building, damaging steam generators and turbines linked to LM6000 gas modules. Another pierced the roof, likely hitting the turbine hull. The strike caused a drop in the power and heat supply across the city. This was one of the region's most modern power units. So if Russia's going to hit Ukrainian power, Ukraine is going to hit Russian power. It's that simple now. The Voronezh power station in Russia was targeted. Here's where Voronezh is relative to Ukraine. And then we also see that in Taganrog, Rostov region, there is a power supply or power facility hit there as well. Taganrog is here. A video from the ground provides a better sense of the extent of the damage and confirms a substation in Taganrog likely was a target. Another clip appears to show a fire at a power substation at the same site, suggesting the substation sustained some damage. It looks like a pretty good hit here as well. Okay, now, so that's what the Ukrainians were doing to the Russians. Last night, Russia's attacks were fairly meager. At night, November 9th, the enemy attacked with 69 strike UAVs. Now, even though they only struck with 69 UAVs, only 34 enemy UAVs were shot down or suppressed. That's a terrible percentage. I'm not sure what even to make of that. What I've observed over time is that the Ukrainians have a hard time striking small numbers when they go to not Kyiv or Kharkiv or major cities, but into various locations. And I'm not sure exactly where they were. This was the night before, and the night before they were like very intentionally targeting energy. In fact, the comment here was Russia's methodically destroying the country's energy system, and it was a big blow to Ukrainian energy last night. This is the British intelligence update in October. Now we're in November 9th at this point. In October 2025, Russia launched approximately 5,300 one-way attacked uncrewed aerial systems at targets across Ukraine, a moderate decrease from the 5,500 drones Russia launched in September. It's highly likely that Russia's October 2025 launch rate was moderately reduced due to worsening weather conditions. Weather results in lull periods were often followed by peaks, which approximately 400 to 650 one-way UAVs were launched over a single night. Okay, that's explanatory. That helps us understand some of things, but I don't think it's just because of weather. They do this intentionally where they save up for a rainy day. I mean, it's funny that I say save up for a rainy day. They save up for a sunny day, actually, on rainy days. But they save up for this so that they can strike harder like they did just the other night. Okay, it's pure horror, says Kira Rudik. Kira Rudik is a member of the Ukrainian parliament. All of Ukraine's thermal power plants, Centernogo thermal power plants, are down after Russia's unprecedented attack tonight. Darkness and cold are our reality. We need weapons to survive. So this is a very intentional thing that the Russians are doing. They're trying to suppress the power within Ukraine. Even before the onset of cold weather across Ukraine, Russia had intensified its campaign to take out the country's power grid, according to Radio Free Europe. Kyiv and multiple regions face 8 to 16-hour outages after a wave of strikes on power and gas facilities. Okay, let's look at the battlefield. The big story here is going to be Pokrovsk. 970 Russians off the battlefield, 5 tanks, 1 armored combat vehicle, 19 artillery systems, 85 vehicles, and fuel tanks. Let's look at this drop in casualties, but engagements remain above the 7-day average, and the Russians really want Pokrovsk. It slowed a little bit, but okay. Now, yesterday and the day before, I've been showing you, well, for the last couple of days, I've been showing you this map. The Russians say that Pokrovsk is surrounded. Kind of. They have this arc here. Maybe let's extend it over to here. What they don't have is this area here, but drones can harass the people in here. As I was reading some email and viewer comments, somebody pointed out, actually, this is a shout out to Joe Kane. I already gave Joe Kane a shout out just for being a graduate YouTube member, but shout out to Joe Kane again. He said, what the word you're looking for is interdicted. On the battlefield, interdicted means to have been subjected to operations that dislay, disrupt, or destroy enemy movement, supplies, or communications. So the Russians are interdicting here with FPV drones, and Ukraine's ultimately going to have to fight their way out through here or push back on these lines, and that's going to be a very hard thing to do, to push back on, especially on the Pokrovsk side, to push back on those lines. Okay, so Russian invaders attacked 69 times in the Pokrovsk section. Here's the Institute for the Study of War. Geolocated footage published on November 6 indicates that Russian forces recently marginally advanced into northern Mirnograd, east of Pokrovsk, a relatively small quantity of area assessed in Russian advances in the Pokrovsk direction compared to recent days. Ukrainian military sources have indicated that Russian forces are somewhat slowing down their offensive operations in the Pokrovsk direction while waiting for reinforcements, and are attempting to establish defensive and extend logistics into southern Pokrovsk. So that seems like that's a fair thing. And this, if you're wondering, it talked about November 6th. This came out November 8th. That's last night. It's November 9th right now. So okay, there was some really interesting commentary here that I wanted to share with you. This Sander did a really good job explaining some things and providing some nuance. The hellish seesaw battle continues in Pokrovsk. The city is de facto controlled neither by the enemy nor by us. I think that's the reality as far as I understand what's going on in Pokrovsk. The fighting is going on for one huge gray zone. We have logistics, so does the enemy, but it depends on specific positions. Okay, so in general, the enemy now has more than a dozen positions that are surrounded. I will not comment on the number of our positions in the same state, but there are fewer of them. That's good to know. I mean, it's Ukraine is slowly losing its grip, but they're trying to reinforce and hold out and bludgeon the enemy as much as possible along the way. And I'm only counting positions where there's a group of more than 3 to 4 fighters. I'm not counting on private apartment buildings where there are 1 to 2 occupiers or 1 to 2 of our infantrymen, because it's everywhere there. In general, the entire area north of the railway is the most difficult for the enemy. But here, it's worth noting the excellent work of the airborne forces, special operations forces, and assault units, which are constantly creating corridors and pressing the occupiers from the flanks. Pokrovsk may become a second Bakhmut in terms of meaning. But in terms of content, definitely not. In Bakhmut, there was no controlled chaos on either side. In Pokrovsk, there is. The only thing is that in such conditions, there is a high risk of friendly fire. Yeah. Generally speaking, as I understand, friendly fire accounts for like 15% of casualties in any war. So this is going to be even more difficult here in these conditions, especially when and this was some context I wanted you to see. Moreover, the enemy does not hesitate to dress up in civilian clothes or Ukrainian armed forces uniforms. And considering that there are still about 1,000 civilians, if not more, in Pokrovsk, this further complicates the work of the defense forces. So not only is there a friendly fire issue, but then Russians are dressing in civilian clothes or in AFU uniforms. It reminds me of the difficulty that American forces had in South Vietnam with the Viet Minh, or the Viet Cong, dressed up as civilians just going about their business, and then they would be attacking. So it's difficult there, but they're holding. So that's where we are. Ukrainian drone flies into a crowd of Russian soldiers who are already happily taking photos on a street in Pokrovsk. It turned out to be a posthumous photo. Okay, so when I say holding, I'm not saying that they're going to hold out forever. I am saying that they are right now still engaged in trying to hold Pokrovsk. Okay, Mirnograd, its sister city, literally can be translated as peaceful town. Isn't that interesting? Used to be a home for more than 46,000 people, no more. Look at the images here. Look how just destroyed, how burned out. This is what the Ruski Mir brings to civilization next door to it. Putin's desperation. Since 2014, Russia has tried to take Donetsk Oblast after 4 years of full-scale invasion. This is all that it's achieved. Now, I want you to see this just for the sake of scale. Losing over 50% of what it gained in 2022, 1.1 million Russian casualties later, and they've got very little to show for it. That's why they're desperately trying right now. Look at the purple here. The purple is, well, let's look at the chart. Held or regained by Ukraine is purple. And then if you look at Russian advances, it's in these stripes. So look at what was regained by Russia, or from Russia by Ukraine, this huge swath here, then down here by Kherson. And if you look, it's just at the periphery. These stripes, that's what Russia has regained. Yeah, I mean, that's what they've taken. I mean, it's really bizarre to see just how little Russia has taken. I talked about this yesterday in a video, like, why is the Russian army just so ineffective? Well, there's a number of reasons for it, and I go into those, but yeah, they haven't really taken a lot. Now, they have to keep throwing men into the meat grinder. Chris O posted this: mobilized Russian soldiers serving on temporary contracts are being threatened en masse with execution if they do not sign contracts, making them permanent soldiers and ineligible for post-war demobilization. Russia's war bloggers are forcefully condemning this. Okay, but this is how Russia rolls. This is what they do. This is also how Russia rolls. Russian slaves, Malawian girls, are forced into Russian slavery while producing Shahed drones in Alabuga. Members of the Malawian parliament are demanding an investigation after information surfaced that has caused a public outcry. Malawian girls are among hundreds of young African women who were lured to Alabuga under false pretenses. A Malawian lawmaker stated, "We cannot remain silent on this matter as it affects the lives of our citizens. Those who facilitated their journey under the guise of academic scholarships or employment opportunities must be found." Yeah, so what's actually happened here is that the Alabuga Start program here, they were saying, like, come learn all these great skills, you'll get your education. Well, they wind up building Shahed drones. That's the skills that they're taught, how to build Shahed drones. It's hardly transferable. The Alabuga Start program has attracted international attention for human trafficking and forced labor. Numerous journalistic investigations have revealed that hundreds of young African and Asian women were lured to Russia with promises of scholarships, but ultimately ended up working under harsh factory conditions assembling Shahed drones. Meanwhile, other African countries have begun helping their citizens trapped in Alabuga. Alabuga has recruited approximately 350 women from 40 countries since 2022, with plans to expand to 8,500. And it's not just there. Argentina, do something to get me out of here. He went to Russia to study, and he ended up in the war. His name is Gianni Dante Bagatia, a 23-year-old from Tierra del Fuego. Traveled to Russia in February to study the language and ended up in the war front in Donetsk, enlisted in the Russian army after signing a contract. He was persuaded by two classmates, so he decided to sign up with a private company that recruits soldiers, which would allow him to earn a monthly salary and obtain a residence permit. Gianni's only condition was not to be part of the Russian army. His father says that he signed a contract. It was written in Russian. This is what always happens. It was written in Russian, and what was supposed to be for 1 year ended up being for 3. He underwent military training for 2 weeks near Moscow, and then in the third week, they sent him to Donetsk. This is how the Russians do it. I mean, the value that they place on human life is very, very low. It's like cattle. Then they sent him to Donetsk, the Ukrainian territory occupied by Russia. The parents sent a letter to the Russian defense minister requesting his military discharge. from his letter home, I'm on the battlefield. I want to go back to Argentina no matter what. I don't care about this country anymore. Please do something to get me out of here. I love you, Dad. I can't mess around much here because those who want to leave or show little willingness are thrown into the grinder. I can't wait to get back, but as long as I'm here, I have to stay strong. Dad, I'm not afraid of dying, but it's just an instant and that's it. But I'm afraid of losing an arm or a leg. It won't be easy for this guy to get repatriated because there are no bilateral relations between Russia and Argentina, since the president there, Milei, made it clear that he supports Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. But I'm not going to give up, he said. Okay, so that's how they backfill. Meanwhile, there are, we talked about Ukrainian mice, laboratory mice fighting for the Ukrainians. Well, here's an owl. The owl knocks down a Russian reconnaissance drone. I don't know that there's any program here, but it was just kind of cool to see the owl. And incidentally, the owl is a symbol of Ukraine and Ukrainian strength and that sort of thing. This gentleman here is a former member of the UK, the United Kingdom Parliament, now fighting for Ukraine. His name is Lopresti. We were alone in 1940, he says, fighting for our survival. The cities were bombed. We always felt an affinity with what Ukrainians face. Let's listen to him.
40 in our DNA. It's within living memory just when we were alone, fighting for our survival, for our existence as a nation. We were bombed, our cities were bombed. So I think we've always felt an affinity with what the Ukrainian people are facing. And I also think we're a very fair-minded country. What's happening is just so wrong and so evil. Putin's...
Yep. It's so wrong. It's so evil. And how people can't see this, it's just baffling to me. It's like, is there no moral compass in the world?
Murdering civilians on a nightly basis with the air attacks, committing war crimes, kidnap children. It's just horrific.
I think
Okay, so that's what I wanted to show you there. But the bottom line right now, Pokrovsk still holds. All right, my friends, that's all that I have for you right now. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person who cares about Ukraine.